Our first guest speaker for today, Kristen Siemen, is the VP for Sustainable Workplaces and the Chief Sustainability Officer for General Motors. Kristen, welcome.
Thank you, Neil. I really appreciate you inviting me to speak here today. Looks like an exciting agenda going forward. So if you want to go to the next slide and we'll get right into it. So I'm going to start a little bit by talking about GM's sustainability journey and our vision, kind of where we've been, where we're at, and where we're headed. You know, GM's been around for a long time, well over 100 years. We've been manufacturing world-class vehicles and delivering innovative mobility services with some of our recent announcements, such as our cruise division that's currently been approved in California for offering commercial driverless taxi service, Bright Drop, which is our fleet delivery vehicles, and then things like OnStar. What you see here is really what drives us at GM. These are our values. Safety is at the core of everything we do. Everything we do is based around our customers, ensuring our brands meet the needs of all of our customers, and really looking to continue to innovate technologies into vehicles that create experiences for people. We exist. Our purpose is to pioneer innovations that move and connect people to what matters. So really focused on everything we do is focused on these beliefs and core values. Go to the next slide. Back in 2017, in fact, it's hard to believe it's been about 5 years. We announced our vision to create a world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. And that has really led to very important business growth and innovation in areas such as our autonomous and electric vehicles. You know, when we first made this announcement back in 17, again, only 5 years ago, a lot of these things didn't seem real or didn't seem possible. And if you look at where we've come in those 5 years and our commitment around an all electric future, things like Cruise becoming a reality, it just shows what potential we have going forward. Go to the next slide. So last year, in 2021, GM announced our most ambitious goals yet. The first was to become carbon neutral in our global products and operations by 2040. We also announced our aspiration to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty vehicles by 2035. You know, this is what we can do to truly impact the environment, you know, help limit global warming. Our ambitions are rooted in climate science. We have approved science-based targets that are in place to track our progress to these goals. And our portfolio of vehicles that's coming out, I think, really shows our commitment and our plan and our ability to meet these very ambitious goals that we've set. Do you want to go to the next one? Great. So how will we get there? You know, we'll focus on decarbonizing our portfolio by shifting our EVs or, vehicles to EVs or other zero emissions vehicle technology. By the end of 2025, we'll have reached more than 1 million units of EV capacity, both in North America and in China. We've made announcements around our investment commitments. We plan to invest $35 billion in both electric and autonomous vehicles by 2025. And that's an amount that we've increased from the original $20 billion that was planned even before the pandemic. We've made very major announcements around our manufacturing facilities. Factory Zero is really our flagship facility in Detroit Hamtramck that is building currently the Hummer EV Super Truck. We'll also be building the Silverado EV that we've announced. So really just super exciting to see. In fact, I was at the plant on Monday and really to see the progress in what's happening there. We've transformed not only the portfolio, not only what we're building, but really the culture and environment of that facility is not to overuse a word, but it really is electric. Other things that we have announced are Bright Drop technology. This was born out of our global innovation organization. And it's really an ecosystem of electric first to last mile products, software and services that empower delivery and logistics companies to move goods more efficiently. We've got EP1 electric moving pallets and connected services that help maximize productivity, reduce congestion. Some of our customers that have been announced already have been Walmart and FedEx, and some of the trials that they have done with those electric moving pallets have shown that they can get efficiency gains of over 25%. So not only are we decarbonizing the fleet, but we're also offering solutions that enable them to have less of a fleet and less vehicles that they need to do to deliver the products and services that they're responsible. And so super exciting to see what's happening in that space. We've also introduced Ultium Charge 360, which is an app and an innovative and holistic approach that integrates all the charging networks with our mobile apps and other products and services to really simplify the charging experience and really the whole EV experience for our customers. We invested with our dealer partners to install over 40,000 charging units at dealer sites, which will connect communities across the US. There's a statistic basically that'll tell you there's about 90% of the US population lives within 5 miles of a GM dealership. So they're really integrated into the community and able to, by partnering with them, we can help identify where the best places to put charging outlets are to meet the needs of the customers in their communities. We're helping EV owners install home charging units and really looking at this from a holistic standpoint. And the other thing we've announced is the Wallace Cell and Battery Innovation Center in GM is our next generation battery facility that will enable us to lower EV costs and really significantly accelerate our speed to market for new technology in this space. This has already been an investment that is showing our capability of future battery chemistries, and the team is focused on doing everything they can to reduce the need for precious materials in the battery, again, reduce costs, increase future EV range, and really just continuing to transform and innovate in what we need for the all-electric future. I'm going to go to the next slide. So how does GM's role in the EV industry, how will it really make a difference? And this is a very simple graphic to just show if we think about the bright drop technology that I talked about in a medium duty truck, and you look at the transformation of going from an ICE vehicle to a zero emissions vehicle, you assume, that about 25,000 miles per year on one of these trucks. And based on that, assuming 2,500 gallons of diesel per year, that'll offset just on that space, 25 metric tons of CO2 per year per truck. So when you think about how many trucks are out there and how much of an impact this can have on the environment, US residential deliveries are expected to reach about 100 million packages per day by 2023. So these solutions are really going to help our customers grow their business and meet their own sustainability commitments, and really having a significant impact on our vision of a world with zero emissions in the future. Go to the next. So probably my favorite slide of the entire presentation is to share some of our products. As I said, we are absolutely committed at GM to an all-electric future and really driving the industry forward by offering a wide range of fun-to-drive EVs in several sizes and styles that'll appeal to all customers. We truly want this future of an all-electric future to be inclusive, and part of that is having products that hit every price point in every segment. We've got products on the road right now. The Bolt EV and the Bolt EUV are some of the most affordable EVs out there. In fact, we just announced a price reduction on those to enable more customers to be able to get into an EV moving forward. The Cadillac Lyriq is an affordable luxury vehicle starting at about $60,000 that also is launching as we speak. Super exciting to see those on the roads. The Hummer EV, SUV, and super truck. If you haven't had an opportunity to see what capability an EV can do, these are fantastic examples with just incredible off-road capability. When you see this vehicle doing what we call the crab walk, it's pretty awesome. So, and then as we talked about earlier, the Silverado electric pickup, which will really offer, customers an opportunity to use vehicles that maybe they use for their livelihood with an EV future. We're projecting that will have a range of more than 400 miles on a full charge. So when you look at this portfolio, and this is just some of what's been announced. In fact, this week, we also had a teaser of the new Blazer EV that's coming, and both the Blazer and the Equinox are going to be, family vehicles that are in the $30,000 price range. So really something that meets the price points and very comparable to an ICE vehicle. So we're excited to bring our customers and future customers along for the ride. Our approach is, very simple and holistic, as I talked about charging stations, et cetera. But we want to continue to work with our partners, our suppliers, government and regulatory as well, to make sure that public policy exists to continue to enhance the convenience and overall EV experience for our customers. Go to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about the manufacturing investments. I said we want this future of all electric to be inclusive, and part of that is really working with our partners in the UAW and our employees. And we've made significant investments from a manufacturing standpoint. We announced over a $2 billion investment in Spring Hill to build the Cadillac Lyriq, which I just talked about. I talked a little bit about Factory Zero in Detroit-Hamtramck, which is, again, our flagship facility that I'm super proud of. Orion Assembly in Lake Orion, Michigan will be building EVs as well. These announcements, in Michigan alone, we announced last year over $7 billion of expansion for both vehicle assembly as well as battery cell and other EV technology. That's the single largest announcement GM's ever made around manufacturing at one time. In Michigan alone, this led to over 4,000 new jobs and retaining an additional 1,000. And again, that's just in Michigan alone. And these investments go deeper. It's not just on the vehicles or the batteries. We announced in January the retooling of our Lockport facility in New York to purchase new equipment and machinery, and they'll be building electrification components there, electric motors. And then the battery facilities that we've talked about, we started with Lordstown and Spring Hill, and announced recently the new plant in Lansing, Michigan as well. And that also is creating, new jobs in each of those facilities. So very proud of the commitment for a U.S. manufacturing base, and again, with our partners in our employees, UAW, really make this happen. Go to the next slide. Just a little bit more maybe about some of our other goals that we're focused on from an overall, sustainability standpoint, and how we get to the zero emissions future. Those are things, we've got commitments and goals around operational energy intensity and water intensity to reduce by 35% by 2035 against a 2010 baseline. Doing a lot of work with waste diversion and achieving our goal of 90% diversion from landfills by 2025. We talked about our carbon emission footprint, and also looking at things like returnable packaging, making sure that they're made from sustainable content and lead to zero waste. Another big announcement that we made this year, which is probably one of the most influential, I think, that long-term is going to have an impact on what we see as a more sustainable future is we're partnering with our suppliers, and we issued a supplier ESG pledge. not only asking them to commit to their own carbon neutral ambitions and goals, but also to do it in a very sustainable way, and focusing on things like human rights and the other aspects of their supply chain. We currently have almost 60% of our annual purchase volume suppliers have committed to that pledge. So really proud of the partnerships that we have there and how we're working together to make this this future that we see a reality. Go to the next slide. So there's a lot of information on this slide, but I'll try and guide your eyes here a little bit. This really shows, our journey to zero emissions, and I've talked about a little bit of this, but hopefully this will highlight how big of an impact this have. If you see the light blue arc here is our scope 3 emissions. That's the customer usage of our vehicles, and it's really about 84% of our overall carbon footprint. The next piece there is our supply chain, purchase services and logistics. So that's what I talked about with the supplier pledge. And then the smallest piece, the 2%, is our scope 1 and 2, and really the area that traditionally I think most companies are focused on, including GM in the past. And that was things that we were doing in our own facilities, energy efficiency projects, et cetera. And while 2% is very small in comparison to the rest of what we have in front of us, it's still really important. And GM's scope is large, and we recognize that. And or I should say our scale is large. So we've made commitments in that space as well. In fact, we had an original commitment back in 2016 to go to 100% renewable energy. When we made that commitment, we said we would get there by 2050. Really not knowing what it would take and how much we could achieve. Last year, took a closer look at it and said, you know what, we can get there by 2035. That was in the beginning of the year. And then by the end of the year, we said, you know what, in the US, we've actually made so much progress, we can get there by 2025. So in the US alone, in a matter of 5 years, we advanced or accelerated our commitment to 100% renewable energy by 25 years. And I think it's just an example of how we don't know how much we can accomplish until we really set our minds to it and start focusing on it and looking for opportunities in everything we do. So really excited for that. GM's currently the 15th largest off-taker of renewable energy in the world, and continue to accelerate our plans again to get to 100%. So a lot of work going on in this space. Again, I've talked about some of the things on our plans on the left, collaborating with our suppliers, our science-based targets, et cetera. But really the focus to me is we want everybody in for a transition to an all-electric future, and we're focused on every aspect of our emissions in the spaces scope 1, 2, and 3. Want to go to the next slide? So getting a little bit maybe deeper into how we're going to accomplish this. One of the things that we're looking at is our real-time carbon emissions associated with powering our facilities. We've entered into a stakeholder engagement with PJM Interconnection and Timber Rock, which is a technology-enabled solutions company, to really track carbon on a real-time basis. And this initiative enables us to make very strategic decisions about our energy consumption based on the carbon output of the grid at any particular given time. We all know sometimes the energy that is coming off is clean, sometimes it's not. And so this carbon tracking initiative really enables us to make key decisions on which energy and what energy and where we're using it at a particular point in time. Eventually, we hope to expand to include, customers' electric vehicle charging and enabling us to understand how they can be charging off of renewable energy and really have a greater impact well beyond our own operations. We believe that a zero emissions future means that even if our vehicles are 100% electric, they need to be charging off of green energy to really get to that ultimate vision that we have. Go to the next slide. So, talking a little bit about the grid itself, and, like I said, the success of an all-electric vehicle future really requires significant transformation of the grid itself. We know we're not the only company or organization that has ambitious goals around clean energy. Climate-related weather events are only increasing in frequency. I think we all can recognize whether it's in our own backyards of, we live in a subdivision in a suburb of Detroit, and we've had, in the past few years, we've gotten to the point where the 100-year rain that the county says is impacting the flooding of our streets, is happening multiple times a year. And so whether it's that or whether it's the tragedies that we saw in Yellowstone this week, even with that park having to be closed because of the impact of the flooding, there's no doubt that climate change is real, it's urgent, and we need to do everything we can to impact and change that. So again, we're committed from a GM standpoint to be a leading voice. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. Sorry about that. I'm in a hotel room and nothing like live. So we're working with policymakers on the future of the electricity grid, looking at increasing transmission for reliability and resiliency, being absolutely necessary to accommodate the dramatic rise in demand that we know is coming over the next years. As we transition to this all electric future, we need to make sure the grid is ready for it and capable. So market transformation to allow for innovative solutions and designs is going to be critical to ensure that clean power is reliable and it's affordable. GM believes we have a strong voice in this, and we're absolutely committed to participating in making the solutions a reality. We sit on many organizations. We play a leadership role in organizations like the Clean Energy Buyers Alliance, American Clean Power Association, and those organizations and associations, alliances are really focused on advancing a more resilient, clean grid of the future. So a lot of work happening in this space. Go to the next slide. So thinking a little bit about the Sankey diagram as it exists today and what needs to occur to transition to this 50% reduction that Bert talked about at the beginning here. It's our position that a vehicle is not just a source of consumption, but it's really a resource as well that can help spur multi-directional electricity on the grid. So electricity doesn't have to flow in just one direction, from generation to grid to consumer. We look at it as a source that can go back and forth and help really address this challenge. So we know first we have to reduce the carbon intensity of industry operations. That's why we're doing things like our renewable energy commitment. Second, the Sankey diagram today has petroleum powering vehicles. So that's our intent of shifting to an all electric future. And then third, we really do see a huge opportunity in using smart charging and vehicle to home and vehicle to grid technology to feed back to the grid, making sure that customers can charge their EVs during times when the grid is powered by renewables. And then maybe they can deploy energy back to the grid when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing, and allow utilities to, again, continue to avoid turning on fossil fuels resources to meet the demands. Next slide. So just thinking a little bit farther about this concept of vehicles as a resource, we see virtual power plants as an enabler for a fully decarbonized grid. Idea being that distributed energy resources such as EVs or stationary storage can really be aggregated into one virtual power plant that can then, during demand times, meet the needs of the grid and avoid that need to turn on the fossil fuel resources. BNEF estimates that there are about 482 gigawatt hours of EVs on the road right now. And you can only imagine how much that is going to grow and what a potential huge asset that'll be for the grid managed in the future if we do it properly. So VPPs are really a critical component of cost-effective decarbonization pathways. they can impact consumers by unlocking savings for them, supporting the high EV adoption levels, and then really looking at how it impacts overall from a carbon reduction standpoint and improving resilience as well. Three barriers to widespread adoption are policies. We talked about needing to partner with governments and others to make sure that this becomes a reality. Retail value, currently the way VPPs are looked at, they're undervalued in what potential we believe they show. And then stakeholder awareness to make sure that everyone's understanding what the economic, social, and environmental benefits are here. The next slide. So this is an exciting, we timed this very well of this presentation. Today is actually a Global Wind Day for those that aren't aware. And we had an announcement this morning with our GM Ventures team that we're super excited about, that we've made a strategic investment and partnership with a Norwegian-based offshore wind technology firm called Wind Catching System. Wind Catching Systems is a game-changing wind power unit that are expected to reduce ocean acreage use by more than 80%. They will cost substantially less to maintain and really solve sustainability issues related to installation and maintenance of these offshore wind, and also significantly increase production efficiency in comparison to conventional offshore wind farms. So we're super excited about this partnership. I had the opportunity to meet with them a few times and actually visit them out in Norway earlier this year, and just an exciting technology and work that's happening in that space. So we expect that this has the potential to really scale offshore wind sector and helping to support that grid decarbonization. It's an extremely efficient use of acreage, and with GM's scale and experience as a leading OEM in renewable energy around the globe, this will not only support our sustainability goals, but we firmly believe that we can help them scale efficiently and become a leader in floating offshore wind. So super excited with this technology. It was featured earlier this year in Wall Street Journal's Future of Everything technology publication. So it's really an awesome future look here that we have. Go to the next slide. So just kind of to summarize here, in order to achieve that 50% reduction from 2005, we have to innovate. We need to develop technologies that enable a decarbonized future, such as things like the vehicle to grid technology and others I talked about. We need to catalyze by working with our policymakers to really drive the market changes that are needed to overcome those barriers to technology deployment. And then we have to deploy. We need to make sure that these are getting out to customers, that we're measuring our carbon impact, establishing new baselines, and just continuing to repeat that cycle. Innovate, catalyze, and deploy. So to wrap up, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today and tell you a little bit about GM's vision of a world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was a great overview of how GM is approaching the electrification and cleanup of their system. We've got a lot of questions in a few minutes before our next speaker comes on, so let's see if I can group them together and hit a few. There's a number of questions that came up at the end as you started talking about vehicle grid and virtual power plants. So maybe you could expand a little bit on how GM is starting to think about this. I mean, are you thinking about expanding yourselves into an energy company? The batteries are, typically the cars are sold, the batteries are sold with them, which creates sort of warranty issues around degradation of life with the charging and discharging. So how are you starting to approach that from a company perspective?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a couple of things about that. First off, from a battery technology and durability standpoint, one of the things we've learned, GM's been in the EV business, for those that don't recognize, for over 25 years, right? We had the EV1, we had the Bolt, and now the Volt, and now we're expanding to the entire portfolio. We have engineers in our company that have been involved in every single one of those technologies and battery technologies. And so it's been an evolution. The exciting thing is that our batteries are lasting much longer than we ever anticipated, which is a great problem to have. And then, so starting with that, the second thing is then, okay, what do you do when we're done using the battery for the vehicle, or it doesn't meet the automotive standards? So looking at batteries as a secondary usage for energy storage systems, backup power, are all things that we are evaluating and looking at business solutions and opportunities for. As far as the vehicle to grid piece of it, as well, as we entered into a partnership earlier this year with PG&E out here in California to use those vehicles, so our bolts specifically, that when they have to take the grid down due to potential fire hazards, et cetera, that the bolts can actually be used as a backup source for home powering. And so that's a really exciting opportunity to think about how it translates into a customer benefit, as well as trying to solve one of the huge challenges that the energy sector has. So we're working very closely with energies and providers and utilities to come up with solutions that solve all of those pain points.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to try and squeeze one more question in, because there were a bunch of questions sort of about the supply chain piece. Obviously, most of your emissions are the tailpipe emissions from the fleet after it's produced, but the supply chain emissions were actually much higher than I was expecting. And so you talked about the supplier agreements, but can you talk a little bit more specifically? You use a lot of steel and aluminum parts in the cars. How are you pushing for those parts of the supply chain? The auto industry is famous for working with the supply chains to really decarbonize aggressively, and are you pushing them to buy offsets if they can't address those emissions?
Yeah, for sure. So first off, we feel very strongly it starts at, it's like what we teach, in kindergarten. It's reduce, reuse, recycle, right? So the first step is reduction, absolutely eliminating every aspect of carbon that we can. We're very focused from a materials standpoint of coming up with new technologies and solutions with our suppliers that are using less carbon, but also from an entire life cycle analysis standpoint of what does it take to put that to produce that product and driving those solutions, whether it be water, energy, et cetera. So our supply base is very committed, working with us. We've made announcements around low carbon steel, working on more sustainable products, leather-free, those type of things in our vehicles as well. One of the important things in this space is really to get clear definitions around what a sustainable material is and what we measure, because you can come up with a lot of marketing terms that you can talk about a vehicle, and if at the end of the day, if it doesn't solve all of those challenges, it's really not the right answer for the environment. And so we're really focused on that. We are not, you mentioned offsets. We don't believe that that's the solution today. Are there going to be a need for offsets at some time in the future? Maybe for those areas that we can't abate on our own, but our primary focus is on reducing emissions both internally and with our supply base and driving that down through the entire supply chain.